everyone. Well, recently I went through a hurricane. I live in Florida, and we just had Hurricane Irma, and I did pretty well. I know there's a lot of people that certainly had it a lot worse than I did. We some already termite damaged fascia on our house got damaged, and the Melaleuca trees that are around my house threw a bunch of debris down on the ground so that we couldn't get out our front gate until I cleared it away. But I was able to do that with the help of some neighbors the first day. So, and probably the grossest thing was when I had to clean out the fridge 4 days, after the hurricane, and the food was spoiling. I only threw up once, though, and we were without electric for a week, but I have to hand it to FPL, a big thanks to them. When I went through Hurricane Wilma, we were without power for 3 weeks, and this time it was only a week, and actually, we got power back 2 days after the hurricane, but then our poles were throwing off sparks and they caught on fire, so they had to shut the electric down. But the surrounding businesses, our electric lights and the other businesses, they got power within 3 days. So that was a big help for all of us that didn't have power. So all in all, I did pretty well. But I wanted to show you today my hurricane stove. I came up with it during this hurricane. One of the things about hurricanes is, it's not uncommon to lose electric. And one of the problems I've always had is, how am I going to cook when I don't have electric? Now, of course, there's several options. A lot of people do hibachis, and some have propane. And there's solar ovens and all that. But there's one problem pretty much with almost every type of cooking that you do during hurricanes, and that is that all of them require being outside because there's a ventilation factor. And sometimes being outside, or with solar ovens, they actually require the sun. Well, the problem is being outside is not always good. It's not always a good time to be outside. Maybe we have rain, or there might be just a lot of debris floating in the air. Because a lot of times when the trees come down, there's a lot of pollen. Or maybe you just have a lot of animals that are going to be, sitting there waiting for your steak and all that. So this hurricane, I came up with this system. I have different ways of designing it, but I use those prayer candles, and you can usually see them at the store. Now, what it usually requires is that you at least need, well, it depends on how big of a pan you're using. You can use regular pans and a skillet. What you do need, though, is you need a pan and a top that goes with it, or a skillet with a top that you can put on it. That's kind of a requirement for this type of cooking. So it's pretty easy to get these candles at the store, even during hurricane season, when people are going nuts and buying everything in sight. They're not usually valued for anything except for praying. They don't really give a lot of light, except if you need a lot of them to get for them to give a lot of light. So nobody's ever used them. They're always the last to go. So it's pretty easy to stock up on them. What I value about them is because they're in glass, so they kind of have this. They send heat up, which is something I kind of discovered just using them in my meditation. What you need something taller than the candles that are going to be used for. You need something to support the pans. In this case, I'm using two taller candles when I'm using one of my small cans. And then I use these 3 for cooking. Hold on. When I'm using a much larger pot, I have a different setup. And this is it. I use a pillar candle, and then I have these surrounding candles. Now, the basic rule is the center candle always has to be shorter than the others. Also, when if you are going to light, that is one thing you have to be careful about balancing there. If you light your side candles, one of the rules is that you can never completely cover the candle with the pan. What do you think is going to happen? Well, like us, fire needs oxygen. So if you completely cover the candle, the fire will extinguish. One thing about this type of cooking, though, is that the candles do cause a lot of soot on the bottom. So when you clean, for one thing, you'll need to make sure you have a pan that can handle that. But you'll have to clean the bottom of your pan, and it is kind of messy. I got, for a while we had soot on our fingers, and so it was kind of a mess that way. But the advantage of this type of cooking is that you can do it inside. Now in this setup, I light all the candles because I have a much bigger pan. And this actually has worked very well for me. I didn't believe it, but I was able to cook a steak. I was able to cook hamburger. I cooked a chicken this way, and it worked. I didn't try doing things like pasta or, well, actually, that's not quite true. I was able to do this type of pasta. I would take one of those pots, and I would follow the instructions, fill it up to the fill line, and then I'd dump it in the pot, and I would cover it, and, I would soften it up that way. But this style, you can cook things like steaks and chickens and all that, as long, and you can cook, you can warm things up, so it's really nice this way. Some other things that you're going to want is to have a plate or something to put burnt out matches on, because they can stain your table. I didn't learn that I learned that the hard way. You'll also want something, because occasionally you do have to stir your pots. It's not really good to do that on top of the candles. If you do stir something on top, make sure to always hold on to the handle. But once something's done or something, you'll want something to put it on, so it also, again, it doesn't harm your table. So as you can see, I'm going to be using this setup today. I've lit the 3 candles in the center. The other 2 are just there to support the pot. Another thing, make sure you don't have anything like oil or anything on the bottom of your pot. Make sure it's clean, because that's going to feed the flames too. And those candles can get quite high. So be careful about that. Be careful of not splashing, particularly if you're cooking with things like oil. And, take the regular precautions of cooking with fire. Now today I'm going to be making an egg. Now as you can see, I have the butter already in there. Now what's also essential, aside from having a lid, is to add just a little bit of water. You don't have to add that much water, but because what aids in the cooking process is having it's kind of like a microwave effect. You put the lid on there, and then the water helps cook the item, makes it go a little faster. Okay, so I have the pan on there. The 2 pillar candles are supporting it above the flames, so that it's not directly on top of the flame. This type of cooking does require you to be, be careful about a lot of wind or something, because that can extinguish it. Okay, so I'm letting the butter melt here. Usually I like to put the pan on, the top on, to kind of speed up the process, raise the temperature. This type of cooking may be a little slower than electric stove, but it's not as slow as you think it is. So let me see, the time is almost 8:55. And we'll see how long it takes for me to cook this. Okay, so the butter is melted, so now I'm going to add my egg. Okay, and there's my egg. And with all my spices, I've mixed it. Now I'm going to, actually I'll put the skillet on the thing now. And then I'm going to put on a top. And we're going to wait. Okay, so we see the egg here firming up. It has been 15 minutes. Of course, I realized I have this in front of the air conditioner. We now have our electric, so the air conditioner may have been cooling it off, so this might be delaying the time. Of course, this type of cooking is much slower than what you would have when you have electric. But I didn't find it was horrible like you waited hours for your stuff to cook. Okay, so I've stirred up the eggs. I may have put a little too much water in this, so that's going to make it cook a little longer, unfortunately. Now I'm going to put the top on and wait a little more. Okay, and here we are, folks. My eggs are done. It's taken 25 minutes, though. It might have been a little shorter. Since I did put it in front of the air conditioner, it may have been cooling it off until I turned it off. But, it does take a little longer than an electric stove. But I didn't find it took that, I didn't starve for hours waiting for my food. If you make something like meat, be sure to pound it out and make it very thin, as thin as possible. But pretty much I cook everything the same way. You add a little bit of water, put a top over it. You can have oil or butter, but be careful, it doesn't slosh over the side of the candles. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more videos.